That first day is definitely nerve-wracking. You come from academy and you have all this information and training and stuff that you learned, but now it's time to apply it, in the real world.
I think it's important for me as an FTO to be able to tailor that educational experience to each trainee based on their life experience. So that first day or two, we really spend a lot of time getting to know each other.
Every day has something new, and every day brings something to the table, and it's exciting because every day you start to see the correlation between different situations. So many of the skill sets and things that you develop early on, way back in academy, those basic principles, they do apply to all these different dynamic situations, even though they're so different.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Wausau PD podcast. We're glad that you could join us. Today, a little bit unusual. In true police department fashion, we had kind of an emergency come up, or just sort of an unplanned thing. We had a different topic scheduled to discuss today. We'll get to that probably at a future topic, but something came up that pulled those folks away. And we were super excited to have a couple of individuals be willing to step in, namely one of our newest officers, Officer Garrett Johnson. We're going to learn a little bit more about him in a second, is joining us. He is in the final phase of his field training, and he is here with Cody Holder. Officer Holder is the trainer for Officer Johnson right now, so we're going to learn a little bit about what a field trainer's responsibilities are as well. So thanks for being here, guys, and we'll just kind of jump in and we'll see where this goes. This is totally an unplanned thing. We didn't have a lot of time to put tremendous thought into this, which is sometimes good. I mean, it gives us the best opportunities to speak from the heart and kind of talk about things as they come up. So maybe Garrett, we'll start with you. When did you start with Wausau PD, and then you went to the academy as well, right?
Yeah. So I was originally hired by Wausau PD earlier this year, January. I was sponsored through Wausau PD to go to academy at NTC here in Wausau. So originally was hired back then, went through academy, graduated, entered right into the field training. Been here through all that all summer long, and now we're down to our last, I think it's five shifts left.
We got 5 more shifts.
5 more shifts left, and then I'll be on my own. So.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that in just a second. Let's find out who Cody is first, so he's not feeling like the third wheel here. Cody, tell us just a little bit about yourself as well. Like how long you been here? What's your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started with Wausau PD December of 2020. I went to the same academy as him at NTC. Originally from Texas. Lost my accent a long time ago, I'm told. I'm happy to be up here. I'm happy to plant my roots in Wausau and enjoying being an FTO. I started FTOing earlier this year, but I've already had 5 different trainees. So I put in a lot of time this year and am growing still as an educator. So
awesome. So we're going to talk. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit here about what it means to be an FTO or a field training officer. What does success for trainees look like in your eyes, or like what you're looking for in trainees when they come ride with you for the various phases of training. So feel free to start thinking about some of those things.
Deal.
But Garrett, maybe coming back to you, how was that academy experience? This was a career change for you, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
How was it like going to the academy?
It was very interesting. I had a chance to talk to a few different officers that I knew and that were friends of mine, and kind of got different information from each of them about what academy would be like or what it wouldn't be like. And some things are what I expected them to be, and some of them were not at all. It was an interesting blend of a lot of new experiences, obviously, but a very interesting time and learning different things that you never consider with this career. I mean, when I chose to start to pursue this career, I was already working a full-time. I had a career. I had gone to school, received my associate's degree in gunsmithing. I've been working for almost 4 years in the Green Bay area doing that. And it was a big shift. And it was, some things about the job, even now through field training, are, somewhat what I expect, from jumping into this career. And some of it is like, I never thought I'd do that or this would be a part of this job. but it's kind of been the fun of it, even through academy and everything. Just some of those days in academy where you have different classes or different things, and it's like, is this really this? Okay, that's police work. Okay, that's part of the job, and it's different. But the new experiences are kind of what make it fun and kind of exciting for me.
Yeah. So, what are some of those things that surprised you, where you're like, man, I never thought I'd be doing that?
I think a lot of it came down to the interactions with people. So much of what we do is just interaction with the public and different people, and I mean, just talking to people and talking through things. And I mean, a lot of it is just meeting people where they are and helping whatever we can. And a lot of that is just listening and talking with people, and developing that skill. And, everyone always thinks about the cool stuff, the driving and all that stuff when you go to academy, and it is fun and it's the exciting things. But so much of what we do is really just, it boils down to developing that relationship with the public and developing that relationship with the people that you're at the end of the day here to serve, because it's the same community. I live here in Wausau, and this is the same community I serve.
Yeah, excellent. So when did you start your field training? Like, when did you graduate the academy again?
Graduate academy back in May, would have been early May. So
so in spring until now, you've been in training this whole time. Cody, I'm going to pivot over to you. Based on what Garrett was talking about, how important it is just kind of meeting people where they're at, listening to people. How important do you see that being for new trainees when they're coming to you? Is that a struggle? Do some people have a good handle on that than other? Is it based on their life experience, or like, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've had a wide variety of different trainees this year, some coming with life experience and whatnot. I think it's important for me as an FTO to be able to tailor that educational experience to each trainee based on their life experience. So that first day or two, we really spend a lot of time getting to know each other, and that way I can kind of start building up I don't want to say like a an educational plan, but really just so I know where to meet them, and for them as well, every FTO has their, sort of first day speech of like, hey, here's the expectations. And I really see it as more of a partnership, more so of, that first phase, they're going to spend a lot of time learning from me and watching me talk to people and see how I do things. But my way is a way, but it's not the way, Yeah. So
I really like that. And I'll say, for those that are listening or watching, if you haven't picked up already on just the first couple of short comments from Cody, and I'm not just saying that because he's sitting over here, he's one of the nicest guys that I've ever met. We're super fortunate to have him at the PD, and especially super fortunate to have him as a trainer. All of our field training officers just do phenomenal. And what they're doing is putting officers on a trajectory for success, really for the rest of their career, for the next decades. So then coming back to you, Cody, based on that, think about your own field training experience and how that put you on a path here to success. I would imagine all of your trainers were different, or did things kind of different, just like what you had said. Like, you learned a few different ways, but not the only ways. And you were able to take some of those, I'm guessing, and sort of synthesize it into the Officer Holder way.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're doing now. Do you reflect back on your training time often, or?
Every day, I learn something new. It's you get 4 months of field training here, and it's hard to experience everything there is to offer. I've been here 4 years and haven't experienced everything, Yeah. So, and that's part of what I love about this job too, is the different experiences. You don't really know what to expect. But again, that's part of my initial sort of FTO speech on that first day of like, hey, pull some things from me that you might not like, but you're going to have different FTOs. Pull something from each of them and develop whatever officer that makes you into. But again, one thing that drew me to this department in the first place was that they hire for character and train for skill. I know that my leadership has already done the hard work of finding the right character for this job. My part is the easy part. I get to teach them, structured policies on how to do stuff, So I really enjoy that, and my leadership makes that easy for me. So
that's a great perspective. That's awesome. Garrett, coming back to you, you talked a little bit ago, just a couple minutes ago. gunsmithing. Now, we don't see that a whole ton coming into the police department. Like it's not like we get bucket loads of guys and gals that are saying like, oh, and I was a gunsmith and now I want to be a police officer. Is there a story behind that, or why policing, I guess? Like why the shift from gunsmithing to policing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the shift and the career change really came from, I'd worked several different careers through a lot of my early 20s, just leading up to the most recent one being a gunsmith. And to be honest, it was not like, like some people just know they want to be an officer, or they know that's the path they want to go down. And it really wasn't something that I had considered through a lot of my earlier years. I just hadn't really considered it. And working as a gunsmith and just working with people and firearms, I enjoyed it and I love it still. For me, the shift kind of came from just a little bit of self-reflection and just taking a look at where I was at my life, the stage of life I was at, and then just taking a look at the community. I mean, I was born in central Wisconsin. I grew up in Wisconsin. I love this area. I love this community and these people. I mean, I love this place. It's my home. And I was just at a point in my life where I felt like I had an opportunity that I could make the change. I could make that career change into something that would allow me to serve the community and allow me to do something for others. I mean, I loved working as a gunsmith and, finishing a project and seeing people's smiles and happiness when something was done. I enjoyed that. And the idea that I could potentially be someone that could help others on a community scale and be there for someone, I mean, it just appealed to me really strongly. And it just kind of started clicking while I was working there. And it wasn't, again, something I had dreamt of for years or something like that. It just kind of fell in my heart. And it was just something that I worked through with myself. I prayed about, and I just came to a point where I was just personally confident about it. I knew it was what I wanted to do.
Great. And now we get to have you here, so It's good for us. So here, I'll try to force the analogy a little bit. Do you see any correlation between your past life gunsmithing? Like, I would imagine there's an art to that, and now problem solving in our communities or communicating with people. Like, clearly in a different way, there's an art to that. But I don't know. Are there skills from your previous life that have crossed over into today?
I would say, if anything crossed over, it would be patience and looking at things sometimes through the analytical part of it. But this job is much more, obviously it's a dynamic job. A lot of it is you're working with people, you're working with other, human beings who are all at different points and stages of their life. They're all going through different things. They've all experienced different things up until this point in their life, and when it comes to gunsmithing, there is a beautiful simplicity to it. There's a finite amount of things that can be wrong and could go wrong, and you can have all that kind of like condensed, and sitting on a bench, when you work on something. Whereas with this job, it is a much more dynamic application, and it's something I'm going to be working on, I know, for the rest of this career, because you'll never stop, learning in that way. But it is an interesting dynamic application of things to look at problems and try to break down those problems in the parts that you can manage, and on a much grander scale, obviously, when dealing with the complexities of this career. But it is still that process of taking everything in stride, slowing down, and breaking apart those problems into things that you can manage and figure out, and then ultimately come to a conclusion to it.
Yeah. Oh, it was great observations. And so far, it's been a great challenge. I'm hoping
absolutely.
For you, right?
It's been a very different, very, very different. I mean, so every day has something new, and every day brings something to the table. And for me right now, I mean, I'm just getting started. I mean, I've been here for 3 months-ish, on field training. Yeah. And so for me, especially these days, I mean, every single day is bring some new thing to the table that I've never seen before. And I'm like, oh, I've never dealt with that kind of circumstance or this kind of situation, and it's exciting because every day you start to see the correlation between different situations and the way that those skills kind of translate between, even though the circumstances change and the aspects might be a little bit different, so many of the skill sets and things that you develop early on, way back in academy, those basic principles, they do apply to all these different dynamic situations, even though they're so different.
Yeah. So Cody, I wanted to ask you, generally we run single officer squads. You're out driving around in a squad car all by yourself. Mm-hmm. But when you're a field training officer and you're actively training somebody, you have somebody next to you your entire shift all the time. You're kind of not just watching them, but it's also like coordinating, like, okay, when do you want to take our break? So talk about when you are with a trainee. Obviously that's a little bit more taxing. You don't have just yourself to think about or whatever the incident that you're addressing to think about. You're also like, oh, and I got to watch this individual too and make sure things are going on. What is it about that challenge or this task of training that really appeals to you and that you find fulfilling? Because I think you do. I mean, whenever I talk to you about your training, especially when after you had your first trainee, you were like, I think this is my jam. I think I'm really going to enjoy this. Yeah. Like what is it that keeps you wanting to train new officers?
Yeah. Well, first off, I don't mind being in a squad together. They're trapped in a squad with me, to be honest, and they're my captive audience, and they have to listen to what I say.
There you go.
So, no, I enjoy that. And again, first day, I describe it as a partnership. I'm like, we're here to problem solve together. Like, I can show you like the first time how I might handle something, and hey, you'll get the next one, and then we'll talk about what's going on. So, I think watching that growth process, so I had Garrett for phase 1 for a whole month, and teaching him day 1, like, hey, this is how you be a cop, and this is what we do, this is how we handle a call for service, and seeing him today, we've made a couple traffic stops, and him just be able to handle that. I'm sitting here like, well, like, he doing everything right, and quite honestly, I'm probably learning some stuff too, and but I think wanting to jump in there and as that type A personality that this career draws, I wanna handle things. I'm a problem solver too, and it's hard for me as a trainer to let people go out there and make those valuable mistakes that they need to make to learn from. So, I will be there to cushion as much as I can and make sure we don't get into, too big of trouble. But it's important to make those mistakes and learn those lessons that they provide.
For sure. So you brought up a good point here, and maybe I should have clarified at the beginning of this for those that are listening or watching and might not understand what our field training program looks like. Mm-hmm. So it's composed of 4 different phases. A new officer will start with a field training officer, Officer Holder in this case, for Garrett, for phase 1 of that training. That will entail a period of time. Then they move on to a different field training officer, right, for phase 2, and then yet a third training officer for phase 3 of that training. And then to come full circle, today is day 1 of your 4th phase of your field training. You go back to your original field training officer. Which is really what you referenced now, Cody, seeing that growth that has taken place from phase 1 to phase 4. And during those different phases, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's been a little while since I was in this in the training program, like you're doing increasingly more percentage or a higher percentage of that work. There are greater expectations laid upon the trainee at each leg of that training, right? And now here in phase 4, it's really anticipated that you're doing all of that work, the bulk of that work. Cody, you're here in a sort of a shadow format to make sure these things have been internalized. Am I hitting this okay? Is it sounding like what your experience so far has been? If not, you've been like, that's not the department I've been working at. So then I will say, Cody, today's day 1, again, of phase 4. What was day 1 of phase 1 like for you? That first day, you're going out, you're in shift briefing with Cody, you'd probably just met him, now you're getting your bag of gear, and he's like, all right, let's go out to the car. Like, what's going through your head?
That first day is definitely nerve-wracking. There's just, especially, I mean, you come from academy and you have all this information and training and stuff that you learned, but now it's time to apply it, in the real world. Now it's time to actually take that step and start doing it, actually out there with the community. And I mean, that first day, there's so much terminology and so many things. I mean, I can remember just having the radio on on that first day, just like such an overwhelming like concept, like, oh man, like I have to like listen to all these things that are being called out and whatnot. And it's like, it starts to feel like it's a lot, but when you watch, especially, I mean, I had you phase one, I mean, watching Cody work and take the calls and answer the radio and just taking everything that just came in stride and just stepping through all of that, it shows like, okay, like this seems like a lot, and it is on that first day. You know, you've never really experienced it before in the real world on that kind of application. But watching Cody walk through that stuff and just explain it as we're taking different calls and saying like, this is why this was handled this way, or why, you know, I answered this way. It breaks it down to the point where it's like, okay, like I can manage this. Like he's showing that this is like, you know, this isn't just like jumping to like, this is why I made this decision. This is why we came here. And it breaks it down to the point where you feel confidence, like, yeah, like, okay, like he's explaining it, and then when the next scenario comes up, it's going to be a little bit different. But again, you start to see how, okay, but I remember how I handled this circumstance, and now I'm seeing the correlation between this, and it just starts all rolling together kind of, and
Sure.
you know, clicking in that way.
So that experience throughout that phase 1, 2, and 3 periods are now, I'm assuming, really benefiting you. Day 1, phase 4, you're a week or so away from, you know, week and a half from getting out on your own. And those experiences, as you cited, have built upon each other. And now you have this pool of experience and information to draw from. And it's not that we just totally cut you loose. I mean, Cody's going to be there. All these other officers are going to be there. It's not like this sink or swim mentality. Everybody's going to continue to be a resource for you.
Yeah.
So, Cody, what does success look like from your seat as a field trainer, even from day 1 of FTO? What are your expectations of a trainee coming in?
Yeah. First off, treat people with respect and dignity. You know, we come into people's lives on their worst days. You know, usually they don't call us if they're having a good day, and that's to be expected. But treat them with respect. That's something, again, that's hard to teach, and that's why I think this department does a great job of hiring for that character, you know, hiring those people that are going to treat people with dignity and respect. So as far as how you handle a certain call, you know, I might teach one way, a different FTO might teach another way. And then it's on the trainee to find that in between of how they're going to handle it. As long as we are following policy and meeting what the state requires of us, that call is accomplished. Also, when crimes involving victims, as long as those victims' needs are being met and we can, you know, help make them whole again, that would be a success to me. And you can get there, you know, many different ways. So.
Sure. What do you see new officers struggle with the most? Like, is it orientation? Is it all the technology? Is it the forms? Is it simply talking to people or understanding how to quickly build that rapport, or safety issues? Like, is it a mix? I have no idea.
It's all of the above. Yeah. So we do ask a lot of our trainees. It's a lot in that first phase.
Yeah.
You know, they haven't read all the policies yet, because it's expected they're going to read our hundreds of policies within the, you know, the 4 phases that they're there. And, you know, we have, you know, some hot policies we would like them to know right off the back. And we spend time, we sit down and talk about those. And, hey, when we encounter this scenario, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to handle that. So our policies kind of act like a guideline for us, but it's hard to retain all of that when you're having to remember your 10 codes and your phonetic alphabet. And by the way, hey, we just passed our call location. And like, do you remember, you know, what car we were looking for, sort of thing. So it's stuff that, you know, I've been here 4 years and I'm still learning. So it takes time. And I was so nervous in my field training that I'm going to be hung out to the wolves and you know, I don't know, like, what if I don't know how to do this call? Well, my partners are there to help me through that. And so that's what Garrett is relying here in phase 4. That's the big objective is to rely on your partners today. So I can't, you know, he can certainly ask me questions. I can't tell him how to handle a call though. after each call to, during phase 4, though, we're going to be talking about, hey, this is what maybe I would have done. But again, there's many different ways to find a resolution. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've always been struck with the fact that like our field training program, it's not designed to weed people out. Mm-mm. Like we have a hiring process that's used to identify the best fit for our department. That serves as sort of this, it has this culling effect on we have a pool of applicants. We narrow it down to those that are going to best fit our mission or help us, achieve our mission. So it's not meant to weed people out. It's meant to help those trainees be successful, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we have a trainee or if there's a struggle or something occurring, then it's incumbent upon us as a department, as trainers, to help that trainee be successful, to work through whatever that struggle might be or that deficiency. So in my experience, it isn't uncommon that sometimes we will see trainees require an extra week or two to focus on orientation. Let's get it up to where you're feeling comfortable. Some of the technology, we have so much more technology in the cars that didn't exist when I started, for example. I can't imagine just the amount of time required to learn all of that. Mm-hmm. So Garrett, hearing some of the things that Cody said about, some of the different struggles or what makes someone successful, what did you find maybe through phase 1, 2, and 3, what did you find that was, maybe I'll use the word struggle just for lack of a better word. It doesn't really have to be like a legitimate struggle, but like, where were you like, wow, this is kind of tough getting this dialed in here. And maybe conversely, what did you feel like, oh, I got this. Like, I feel pretty comfortable doing that already.
For me, I would say probably one of the biggest things was finding that proper balance. And when it comes to things like the technology and orientation, keeping all that balanced when you're working. I mean, when you're on a call or you're driving or everything like that, I remember orientation was something definitely that I had to work on. I knew the central Wisconsin area, but I had never lived in Wausau before coming here to work for the police department.
Oh, sure.
And so learning the orientation of Wausau was a big part of, especially phase 1 and even phase 2, was breaking down learning all that. And I remember even Cody talked about it. He said as far as orientation goes, here's some advice. Go on your off day in your car and get lost and start driving around town. And I did. And it really did help to take that time to really learn the city, and that's when you start to know all that stuff and learn it better. And to the point that you actually know orientation, where you're driving and all the road names and stuff, it's easier to keep things like the radio in check and everything else. You can balance it easier. But that was definitely a part that had to take there's no way to, fast track it. You just have to learn it, and a bit of it is just kind of jumping in, I lean towards book learning. I love book learning. I love the policy reading, stuff like that. None of that bothered me. I love the little breakdowns and reading manuals, stuff like that. Like I love that. Sometimes for myself, when it comes to learning in the ways that you just got to go hands-on. And oftentimes throughout a lot of these different training periods, but with Cody and with many of my other FTO trainers, I mean, it was just kind of that push that they gave me to be like, hey, just jump in. Like you gotta go hands-on at this point. And this is something where you just gotta try it out. And and you make mistakes on stuff, and they're there to be there to help you out in different ways and to make sure that you don't, obviously fail. Like they're there to be there and be your support for that. But they let you make mistakes because definitely beyond any other, teaching aid or anything else, from the mistakes are definitely the most lessons I've learned.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I went through the field training program here in 2002 and had some great field trainers and learned a lot of good things, but that's what stayed with me the most. I still remember my very first traffic stop. I remember where it was. I remember the first time I actually had to place handcuffs on a person that was going to be going to jail, and those were terrifying experiences for me. And I remember the apprehension, but I also remember the training officer kind of downplaying it, like, hey, just like, you can do this, just go do it. And I thought, well, if they have faith in my ability to do this, like I can just go do it. I should just get over whatever, internal issue I had. Because this was a career change for me as well. I came to this after having done some other things. And so learning a new skill, right? I mean, it took up a little bit of bandwidth in my head to kind of get that down. So yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. So here you are now in phase 4, and you're like, how are you feeling about the impending kind of cutting the umbilical cord, as it were, and getting out on your own?
I feel excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get into it. I've got my assigned rotation now, my shift and everything, and going to be starting soon, getting to know the people I'm going to be working with day to day. I'm excited for it. It's been a lot of fun through field training. It's been, again, new experiences almost every day, which adds to the level of excitement and enjoyment I'm getting out of it. But I'm excited to start diving into it, proper, and on my own. I'm excited.
For sure. That's great. Well, we're excited to have you out there, out on your own and filling a shift. I think you're going to be on night shift, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Yep. So we'll be looking for you out and about in the middle of the night. I won't be. I'll be sleeping. But so, Cody, what? Actually, I think I'll ask both of you this, but let's start with you, Cody. This will sound like it's a wrap-up question. I don't think it is. It's not meant to be, but maybe it is. We'll see what else you guys have to say here.
Sure.
But what advice would you have for somebody who is looking to maybe get into, two things, looking to get into this profession, what they can expect, in a field training, like how to best prepare for that experience, or maybe what advice would you also have for an officer who's thinking, I don't know, maybe I want to be a field trainer, maybe I don't want to be a field trainer. Like, what is your take on that? And then we'll skip over to Garrett, because I want to hear what you might have to offer by way of advice for individuals that are thinking of making a career change that they've been putting off for a while and coming over into law enforcement. So we'll start with Cody.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those looking into law enforcement, I would say focus on what's driving you here in the first place, right? So everybody in their interview, at their first interview in a law enforcement agency, will say, I want to help people. Well, that's great. Like, we want people that want to help people. How are you going to help people? What else are you going to do to help people and really guide people through their tough days, and are you going to be able to make the appropriate decision? And so these are all different variables, and there's so many things that I just didn't know that law enforcement did before I got into this job. So there's plenty of resources out there, plenty of, I would say, documentary shows that you could watch, and even our department, we produce ride along videos. I've been in a couple of them. Yep. So watch some of those and kind of see and learn and put yourself in that situation on how you would handle that particular traffic stop or that particular call, and see if that's something that you're capable of. At the end of the day, just talk to somebody. Come talk to me. Come talk to an officer. Talk to your school resource officers, whatever it may be, and get a feel for what a day-to-day life as a police officer could be. As far as anybody looking to become a field training officer, I didn't know I was ready. I think our requirement is 3 years on here, and I remember Melinda Pauls came in and asked me is this something you're interested in? And I'm like, yeah, I think, as I said before, like, I draw from my FTO's experiences every single day in this job, and I still go to them with questions, and I feel comfortable going to them with questions because they created that environment for me. So that's something that I would like to be able to do for other trainees and be a resource for them down the road. They don't have to be in training anymore, and just here to bounce ideas off of. Definitely the educational piece is been a challenge. As I said, I like to do things myself because I have an idea in my head of how things should be done. But again, it's a way, not the way. So I think that's the advice that I have. So
no, those are good. Those are definitely good pointers, good tips. Yeah. Garrett, any thoughts?
For someone thinking about coming into this career, maybe making that career change, you're already in a career, you think you want to pursue law enforcement. If you want to, I would definitely recommend, if you have the opportunity, do the ride-alongs. If you know people who are officers, talk to them about it. Ask them the questions. Like I had tons of questions about law enforcement when I was thinking about getting into it, and I didn't know, like, could I do this job? Am I capable? Like, what's it all entail? Just talk to them. Because, I mean, I did a few ride-alongs before I ended up at Academy, and I remember feeling so, like, intimidated to, like, ask questions, you know, about the career and stuff like that. Like, feeling like, oh, can I do this job, stuff like that. If you are on ride-alongs and you're talking to officers, just ask them questions. Ask people. I mean, because again, we're always learning new things. And in this career, you never stop learning. You know, you're always building that pool of knowledge that you have. And anyone that has just as much experience or more experience than I do in this career, I want to bend their ear. I want to learn things from them because they have a giant pool of knowledge that I can draw from. And I want to learn as much as I can in that way. So just talk to officers. If you have the opportunity, go on ride-alongs. Ask people the questions you have. You know, I had questions, ask them. And if you do end up going to like Academy, or you're starting to go down that path, relax. Just relax. It feels like so much at first. It feels like they're dumping all this terminology and stuff, and it can feel overwhelming. Take a breath, take a step back, and relax. Think it through. Talk to other officers, even when you're in Academy. Talk to officers, learn a bit from them. Ask them stuff that you're learning in Academy, bounce things off of them, and help kind of like develop that initial pool of knowledge that you can learn from.
Yeah, I really like that. I was thinking as you were saying that, in addition to kind of reaching out to others that can be a resource for you, how important is it, and do you feel that this was your experience here to get integrated within the department? Like, do you feel that you've kind of become, you know, the fabric of Wausau PD, and that yeah, I'm part, like, this isn't just like I don't come in, punch in my card, and I do my little thing in my little bubble, and then I punch out and I go home, and I don't really like, how integrated do you feel as part of our group here?
I definitely feel very integrated, especially starting to learn the shift I was just assigned to and getting to know the people there. Again, these are the people you work with day to day. And especially for me, I mean, being new to this job and about to go out on my own, these are the people who I look to for advice and guidance. You know, you can't work this job alone. That's just, it's not possible. Yeah. We need each other in this job. And we need to be able to trust each other and bounce things off each other and understand each other. And to do that, you've got to be integrated. You've got to know your coworkers and the people in your department. Because at the end of the day, they're the people you rely on when you need them most, which is every day we're doing something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree, and I feel that each day. I think of the people that I get to work with and interact with, and there's officers, lieutenants, captains. There's so many people that I go to on a regular basis that have experience and expertise and understanding that I just don't have. And I think that that's okay. I used to think like, man, I got to learn all this stuff and I got to become as good at that as that person is and in that specific, tactic or whatever. And the reality is like, you don't necessarily need to. You need to know who those resources are. Yes, we want our officers to be trained and be safe and be able to go out and carry out their responsibilities. But then as everybody sort of finds this, this path for them and an interest. And we know there's a lot of them here at the department, whether it's being a field training officer or getting on a special team capacity or, getting into investigations or whatever. There's all these different paths, and knowing that those resources are there can be really comforting. Yeah. So in addition to all the expertise, and we have tons of it here at the department, having kind of this attitude of humility and being teachable also seems to be a good asset as well. Always learning things. Yeah,
and being, I remember in early phase one, that was something that definitely I felt very nervous about. You want to impress. You want to show that I can do this. Like I'm capable. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. We're working through this together as coworkers. We're working together. Like, to be like kind of nervous about like, oh, is asking this question going to make it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about? If you don't know, ask. Yeah. That's why we're here. That's why we have each other. You know, no one ever knows everything about this career. You know, we have people who are really good at certain things in certain areas, but no one knows everything. That's why we need each other, to be able to bounce those things off each other and ask those questions so that we can learn and develop that pool of knowledge that we have.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not asking, there's a pro tip out there. If you're not asking and you're in like your first couple years or, you know, even a little more than that of your law enforcement career, people know that you're just trying to like act like you know what you're doing. Like, don't be afraid to ask. Because like nobody knows all this stuff, you know, a few years in. Like we're all learning, like Cody had said too. Yeah. And there's always something additional to keep learning. So since you've been out in field training now, my guess is that you've been able to respond to quite a wide variety of calls. You're coming into policing at a time when law enforcement officers are under tremendous scrutiny. There's a lot of very strong opinions about policing in our communities in this country. We're fortunate we get to work in a fantastic, supportive community. It's a great place to live and work. But we still have to go to difficult calls. We still have to deal with difficult things and sometimes difficult scenes. How have you been able to navigate that, or what are some of your thoughts or observations on that?
There have definitely been a few instances through these early months where kind of taking those first really challenging calls, the different things that we talk about and you learn in academy and early training and stuff, there's things that we talk about, but it isn't something that all the training in the world can really prepare you for until it actually happens and you experience it. When you respond to a call where someone has passed away and there's family and there's loved ones there and they've just lost someone, working through that process, I mean, again, it's something that we're taught how to work through that process and we're trained how to work through that process. But working through that process for the first time with someone and being there when that moment happens, it's very challenging. But at the same time, knowing that I was there for that person on what was probably the worst day of their life potentially, that I could be there, and if nothing else, I was something that could be there as a support for them, that I could be there for them in that moment and in that unimaginable trial of loss. It's why I wanted to become an officer, to be there for people on their worst day. And it's challenging and it's difficult, and it's something that I'm sure I have, like so much learning to do about how to properly really work through that to the best of my ability. But being able to be there for someone in that moment, it means everything to me.
That's awesome. I'm so glad. I appreciate you sharing that with us, and don't ever lose that feeling. I'm not suggesting you would, but I really hope that our community members watching this understand that our department is full of individuals that feel that way, that do this for that reason, because they want to help people in a really profound and meaningful way. So Cody, you've been doing this a little longer than Garrett. You've had a lot of those experiences too.
Yeah.
How important is the quality or the trait of empathy to you in carrying out your responsibilities? Maybe in those, not just in those kinds of situations that Garrett described, but just generally as well, just being an empathetic individual when responding to calls.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely an asset for us. It's, it's like any other tool on our tool belt. We absolutely have to have that. And we wouldn't be in this career if we weren't caring individuals in the first place. We do this so we can be there. We can be there for those people in those times of need and be able to be the voice of reason in some circumstances, or be able to guide them through that because we've done this a time or two. And so, I made plenty of mistakes in my field training. I make mistakes all the time, but it's a great asset to be able to teach different trainees. I within that first week of getting to know each other, I'm, sharing my worst calls and hey, like this call really sucked. And like, I made this mistake and it blew things out of proportion. And I really regret that. But in sharing that, hopefully you don't make that same mistake. So, yeah.
So there's this element of vulnerability as well, along with in your training rather of new officers. It's okay to let them know, like, hey, you're gonna make mistakes, and we all do, and that's part of it. And I think that maybe what you're saying, if I'm reading between the lines, is that can enhance our ability to help others and to understand when they are having difficulties, whether it's in a field training situation like this, where maybe if you see Garrett kind of kicking himself in the wake of a call where he's like, I should have done this differently or that differently, you can have empathy for that and talk them through that. Or out at any service call that we're responding to where people are struggling with different trials, whatever it may be, we're able to empathize with what's going on there and kind of frame that appropriately so we don't either overreact, underreact, but that we give it just the appropriate diligence that it needs in order to rectify a situation and make a day better for somebody else.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate those comments. I appreciate you guys sharing those things. So we talked about like difficult calls or whatever, but like what's just been, I don't know. Sometimes there's a lot of amusing things. Sometimes there's things that are just really enjoyable. Whether it's, I don't know, giving tours or going to here or there, I don't know what. Has there been anything so far for you, Garrett, a standout experience where like, oh, that was a blast. Like that was super cool.
Yeah. Experiences where, you have an opportunity to really, make someone happy. Being able to go out, back in phase 2, stopping out at some of the elementary schools, and kids coming out and getting to show them the squad car and turn the lights on and stuff and look at different things that we have in there. And you have a computer in your car, and like they're so excited by this stuff, and they're excited that you're there and to look at this stuff. I mean, and they're just happy that you're there, and they're happy to be experiencing it. And I mean, those things are really cool. The calls where someone really needs you, like someone like, like a car broke down or something happened that someone just needs your help with something like that. And you're able to provide that. And they're just so thankful that you were there for them, that they had you there for them. And it just puts a smile on your face because it's like, you know that person will remember that you helped them in this way. And it's that experience where it's like, it means so much because you know that you left and that person will remember what you did for them that day. Those are the calls that definitely through this have been like the joyful ones.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I get a kick out of that to this day too, when you have an opportunity to interact with some young people or do things like that, or you see someone who was really appreciative of the time that you took to visit with them or help them work through a problem. So in 5 more shifts, assuming Cody gives you his blessing, you'll be ready to go out on your own. But the training doesn't stop there. I mean, we're talking in this conversation, we've learned about our field training program, but training is going to go on and on and on. Maybe talk about, and Cody, you might have a better perspective into this, but and also likely from your military days before coming here, how important is that ongoing training to your continued professional development, but and keeping your skills sharp and those kinds of things, but also maybe even to open your eyes to other opportunities here within the department, things that might interest you later on in your career.
Yeah, and there's many different special teams you can go on within Wausau PD, which is great. One of the reasons which drew me here. I was just talking with Garrett about he has A-RIDE, which is Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement, coming up, and then he's also going to have CIT, Crisis Intervention Training, which 2 of the most valuable trainings that we can go to. And thankfully, our department makes it a priority that these are mandatory trainings, whether you're in field training or off-field training, and those are skills that I use every day. CIT, Crisis Intervention Training, it really taught me how to speak to people and just have a level head when dealing with somebody and having a mental health crisis and understanding and recognizing what that may look like. With A-Ride, we use our OWI enforcement, especially you go in to night shift. It's going to be an invaluable resource for you.
So overall experience here, Garrett, as you're winding down your field training, positive, negative? Sounds like positive is what I'm hearing so far.
It's been very positive.
Good.
It's encouraging to know that the people who are training me right now, who are my field training officers, are my coworkers, and getting to know the other people who work in this department and getting to know the people on my shift, finding that, that's the attitude. That's the attitude of the people that you get to work with on a day-to-day is they're here to help, educate you and continue that as you're going forward and to just be there to be the support as you're moving through in this career. It's been very positive. I've enjoyed learning different things, and you even talked about how every field train officer, we're reaching the same conclusions, but everyone has different ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. Everyone has different styles, and learning those different styles and taking from each experience different things and learning different things from people's just methods. It's been very, very helpful to see that there are different ways you can approach different scenarios, because with the dynamic way that the things that we deal with on day-to-day are, it's comforting to know that there are multiple avenues you can take depending on what you're dealing with, So it's been very positive for me. I've enjoyed all of it.
Awesome. So now the Garrett Johnson way of doing things is starting to get kind of developed here and solidified, and I would imagine, and hopefully in a few years here, we'll be having new officers are going to be learning from a field training officer. Maybe Officer Johnson is going to be out training new officers and carrying on that legacy of putting people, really, our new staff, really on a good trajectory for success to continue to serve the community at the high level that they've come to expect from the Wausau Police Department. So super glad to have you here. Very excited to have you here. Glad to hear that things are going well. Cody, if he's not doing that well and you've just kind of been blowing smoke here a little bit for the sake of our filming, that's cool too. You and I can talk offline afterward. But
well, he talked me up, so it's a pass for today at least. So
actually, that's one thing that we didn't quite hit upon. There's a giant evaluation component to this whole field training. Like it isn't kind of this like, well, hey, today you did pretty decent. See you tomorrow. There is so much feedback and evaluation that goes into that, which can also be stress inducing and take a lot of time for the field training officer to do that appropriately in a way that's going to be meaningful. And help develop that new officer. Maybe you can just talk a little bit, like how many different categories are you providing observation or evaluation on, and like what does that look like, and how often does that take place?
Absolutely. So they're called our daily observation reports, or DORs. And so throughout the day, I'll keep either notes in my head or I'll write down more complex thoughts on how a particular call was handled or whatever it may be, and the categories range from anywhere from, was the uniform clean today, or how did this trainee interact with members of the public? Are they treating them with respect, or are they driving with due regard? How are they driving on a normal condition or driving on a high stress condition? Can they conduct an investigation? Are they keeping policies, laws, and ordinances in mind when they're doing these investigations? So many different categories, ranging from I believe it's 1 to 7. 7 being the excellent, like in phase 1, it's expected that you're going to get below average scores on some of these things because you're still learning policy, you're still learning laws, you're still learning how to do this job. So don't get disheartened. And again, this is part of our first initial conversation, don't get disheartened whenever you get low scores. That's how we show improvement throughout the process. So, through phase 4 and even in phase 3, I had you a couple days in phase 3 as well as a stand-in, and I was giving you high scores on some of those marks. You know how to conduct a theft investigation, or appropriately document your calls. So, in phase 4, it's expected you're going to get higher marks than you did in phase 1. So, yeah, lots of different stuff. It could be nerve wracking. And I told you every time I evaluate you that nothing should be a surprise. We talk at the end of every day of like, hey, here's what went well. Here's what we can improve on next time. I would like to maybe see this handled a little differently next time. But
that was a big part. It was just the openness aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like none of this is a trick. Like none of this process is like, oh, like he didn't get that, so now we're gonna mark that down on the score. Like that's not the approach. Everything that shows up on a daily observation report is something we talked about.
Yeah,
it's a call that we debriefed together and we worked through together, and already talked about the points that are going to show up on that report.
So it's not meant to be like this gotcha kind of a thing.
No.
Although I remember my heart starting to jump a little bit more when I'd be driving, and I could sense the FTO next to me as he pulled out the pen, clicked it open, and started writing something down on a clipboard.
There definitely been a few moments where I seen the notepad come out and immediately start assessing everything I was doing. Like, okay, wait a minute, where's the mistake here?
I mean, it's not quite to the point where like you'd show up for briefing that morning and they're like, "Is that what you're wearing today?" Because we're all wearing this uniform, but kind of felt that way a little bit. Like, man, what did I do? Like, But it's it's good because if you come into it with that teachable attitude and a desire to learn and grow, you do learn and grow. And if you're getting 7s all the time, like there's nowhere to go. You can't go up from there. So there's no way that you're coming on board and your orientation is excellent, especially if you're not from here. There's going to be some learning that needs to take place. So and throughout the rest of the career too. Any last thoughts from either of you? We missing anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're interested in this career, give it a shot. Come talk to me. Come do a ride along. I'm happy to sit and talk about this job. I love this. This is the best job I've ever had. I've been in the Army. I deployed to Afghanistan twice, and I've had a couple other different careers, and this is by far what I love doing. This is not just a career for me. This is a livelihood. So.
Awesome, and we are a better place for it. Garrett, any final thoughts?
That's it.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you here as well. Thanks for watching. And like we heard today, if you have some interest in learning more about our field training program, about our department, and about potential career change for you or for someone that you know, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can be found in a lot of different ways online. Just give us a holler, and we would love to answer those questions. Also, let us know, perhaps in the comments, or send us a message on what you'd like to hear us talk about in upcoming episodes of the Wausau PD podcast. So thanks for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you later.